have
Randy,
a safe
we've got a
space
problem.
wherever
What?
they go.
Reality's here.
But of course,
He's trying to
that
crash the
takes a
party.
lot of effort,
Reality?
a lot of resources.
Who let him in?
You're sad that people are mean? Well, I'm sorry. The world isn't one big liberal arts college campus.
I don't have an agenda like I want people to do something. I need them to do something. I want them to avoid irrationality.
I guess what interests me is just like what interests everybody else. It's just sort of what feels real.
That was totally wicked!
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Real News. I am so excited about this morning in particular because it's after a weekend, man. A bit of a gloomy down weekend for some. You know, some it was a happier weekend. Who knows? I'm back with y'all though. I'm back with the Real News family doing it. We're diving into the deep end. My name is Mr. Henry. David Shine Thompson sitting over there, flying in like a ninja as he always does. Sometimes it's from the left, sometimes it's from the right. Who really knows? realnewsradio.live, realnewsradio.live. That's where you're going to be able to find a central sort of landing page, a hub for all things real news related. You'll be able to find our Facebook page. Oh, we got a Twitch tab up there too, and the Mixer tab. Every single time I come onto this page, Shine just surprises me with something new. And he tells me, by the way, too, that he doesn't tell me these things are happening. He just sort of lets me organically stumble upon them, which is awesome. I'm looking at it right here. We got the Facebook tab, YouTube tab, but now we have the Twitch in the Mixer tab. We have a couple new things in the store here for you. realnewsradio.live if you love any of the real news stuff, if you want to follow along. My dog says hello to everyone in the background as well. David Sean Thompson, though, buddy. How you doing on your end over there in East Tennessee? How was the weekend for you?
Weekend was great. Had a great time this weekend. My brother came over, and we had brother time, and it was really nice to hang out.
We had brother time.
Well, hey, that's not. You know, I'm an adult, and my brothers are adults. You just don't get as much brother time as you did when you were kids. So it was really nice, and you know, obviously too, I talked to a lot of people in the Real News family. So thanks to everybody that reached out this weekend. We're ready for another great week of Real News. So I'm super stoked.
And by the way, too, speaking about another great week of Real News, as you're hearing my stuff in the background here, Harry, that's my bad, Shine. We had an awesome little event. By we, I mean myself, David Shine Thompson, on behalf of Americans for Prosperity, went and saw this guy, Steve Glover. He's an at-large council member here in Nashville, speak this weekend at a little barbecue spot about the property tax increase that's going on in Nashville. Now, we've been speaking about this for quite some time. We've been telling everyone as well. If it happens in Nashville, there might be a likelihood. Again, this is just a slight speculation on my behalf, not on behalf of AFP or anybody else. It's just my speculation that if Nashville passes something, there may be a likelihood that, say, Knoxville could get wise or Memphis could get wise and try and, do something of their own. Now, in Nashville, it was this situation that led up to, hey, it was terrible spending habits of the past that are now haunting the current spending decisions of the future, coupled with the tornadoes. And then on top of that, the COVID-19 shutdown. And then on top of that, we have the protest stuff going on. So it's been awkward shutdown after awkward shutdown after awkward shutdown, and just economic catastrophe after economic catastrophe. And something kind of needs to be done. So the mayor of Nashville's suggestion to that was, hey, why don't we raise the property tax by 32%? That's 32%. Steve Glover says, I think there's a better way. I don't think we need to raise it by 32%. That's kind of a heavy burden for a lot of people to be paying right now, especially during a time where they may actually be losing their jobs on top of that. So he spoke this weekend. That video is up on the AFP Middle Tennessee and AFP Knoxville page. It's also up on the AFP Tennessee page. I think Shine actually posted it on the Real News page as well. If that is something
you can find it on Real News. Yep.
Awesome. If you want to hear Steve Glover's presentation as to, hey, we don't need to go full 32%. There's probably something better we could do here. We can turn a mix of something else, a little bit less. Maybe we can spread and allocate that tax burden across it in slightly more fair manner. I don't know. If you want to hear the presentation, go check that out. We are also having some interviews with some folks afterwards that are posted on the channels. If you want to help us in that movement, China actually just posted in the comments section, you'll see, and also at the top of the show notes, you'll see a letter to the Legislators section, a quick little bit.ly link there. Sign that. Let these legislators know exactly how you're feeling on the issue. One other quick update, and we'll dive into the stories because you see the headlines right now, disband police and COVID confusion. I actually kind of liked coming up with the headlines for today's show because that's exactly what it is. We're talking about disbanding the police and where's this COVID confusion coming from. One other quick update as far as it pertains to civil asset forfeiture. This is actually rolling us in nicely into the theme of today's show with disbanding the police type stuff. Quick aside, I'm starting to wonder now that we're entering this realm of a nuanced conversation about what the police mean to society. I'm really asking people to, all right, before we go headlong into disbanding the police, take a beat for a minute, do a bunch of research, have some conversations with your folks that have been operating in this world for a very long time, because disbanding and defunding police is just, that's a very generalized term that I'm sure our anarcho-capitalist friends would love to take on. And I agree, I hear you. But that generalized term could mean almost anything. And my fear is that Democrats are asking to defund the police in conjunction with getting rid of the Second Amendment. And that is a recipe for disaster. Getting back to what I was saying before, HB 862, goodness gracious, HB 862, that is a civil asset forfeiture practice bill that Representative Justin Lafferty out y'all's way in East Tennessee area. That bill does something very simple, very simple. It says in the state of Tennessee, if you're watching for the first time, if you don't know what civil asset forfeiture is, everyone probably does, but police officers can actually seize your property and forfeit it, meaning take it away from you, even if you are not convicted of a crime. I won't go into the intricacies of why that is. Just take my word for it. That's what's happening in Tennessee right now. They can take your property and you don't have to be convicted of a crime. This bill does the very simple thing of just saying, if and when that does happen, if police officers take your property and do not charge you with a crime, we want to know how often that is actually happening. We want to know how often in the civil court system over here is stuff being taken away and you're not being charged with a crime in the criminal court system over here. You get what I'm saying? We want to know statistically how these two are matching up. It's a pretty simple thing that we're asking for. The data is already being accumulated right now. We just want it to be properly reported back to the state. So sign that bill. Just basically let legislators know. We want to know how often the police are taking our property and not charging us with the crime so we can use those statistics going forward. Diving into the first headline today, and let me know how you're thinking here in Facebook comment section here. They're already getting ready for this defund police conversation. A little bit something similar to that. Here in the Nashville area, we have 3 council members that are asking the Nashville police chief to resign. Now, this story, you kind of have to know this name. You kind of have to know the name of some of the players involved. But I digress. Here's the story. Several council members in Tennessee have called for the resignation of police chief after warrants were issued for 2 community activists and then later rescinded. Metro Council members, Freddie O'Connell, and on Thursday urged Nashville Mayor John Cooper to request the resignation of Metro Police Chief Steve Anderson, these news outlets reported. And O'Connell tweeted the following: "We have reached the point of absurdity, have we?" Referencing warrants issued for Nashville activist Justin Jones and another individual last name Harris on riot charges. Now, Justin Jones is the name in particular that's, I don't know, man. If you're from Nashville, the guy has he has a reputation. I'm not saying it's a good or bad reputation. I'm just saying it is a reputation. He has a reputation for, say, getting involved with legislators face to face. So I don't know the backstory, but I think what ended up happening is that when some of this stuff went down, I think an arrest warrant went out for, say, the likely suspects, and it turned out to probably be wrong. In this case, I think it did turn out to be wrong. Metro Police announced that the arrest warrants for Jones and Harris on Thursday, stating that the pair were connected with Saturday's vandalism of a police cruiser, not of the courthouse being set on fire. That is another thing, Shine, that is driving me a little bit insane right now. I've seen a lot of my buddies go up there and post about these things of vandal that burned the courthouse or something like that was arrested. And then somebody comes in, correction, white vandal that burned the courthouse. It's like, dude, really? I don't, whatever, dude. I don't see the need for adding the division.
Hey, let's just throw meritocracy in the toilet. Everything is about your skin color. Let's just embrace it.
Right?
Let's just embrace it, you know?
Like the dude set a courthouse on fire. Can we all at least just start out by agreeing that he probably should go to jail for that? I mean, whatever.
No. Forget the word probably. You should go to jail for that. You should go to jail for burning a police car. You should go to jail for lighting a trash can on fire, to be perfectly honest, at least for a night. Probably means you need a break.
Now, Metro Police, Harris tweeted that she would turn herself in. This is one of the individuals that they were looking for. Harris tweeted that she would turn herself in and said, quote, "If something happens to me, I did not kill myself." Jones also took to Twitter stating that the warrants were, quote, false and politically motivated. Now, here's where the interesting turn takes here in Nashville. 3 hours after that announcement that Jones and Harris were the two individuals they were looking for, again, not in connection with the court fire, in connection with setting a police cruiser on fire. 3 hours after that announcement, Metro Police recalled the warrants after reviewing, quote, additional information received by the department and District Attorney General Funk. Glenn Funk is his name, which I believe is one of the coolest names for a DA to possibly have in the entire nation. DA Funk. Does that sound like a DJ or something? DA Funk. Anyways, Glenn Funk apparently gave the police department some additional information, and council members, Rosenberg at large, member Mendez as well, have also called for Anderson's resignation. Now, again, this is a little bit more Nashville specific. Jonathan says in Facebook, because Jonathan's one of our great Nashville guys out here in the area, always hits this with awesome commentary. He says any destruction of public property should be jail time, or at least restitution to the amount of replacement, or both. Absolutely. Matt just said in Facebook, they want things to get so bad we will beg for the boot. Goodness gracious. I mean, it's a little bit of what's going on right now, is it not? I mean, to say that here's what's interesting, Sean. So last week I made the call that I was virtually certain that the element of violence was going to quickly, I was about to say be quelled, but that's a really bad way to say it. The element of violence was going to quickly sort of
dissipate,
taper off. Say that again, Sean.
Dissipate?
Yeah, dissipate's a better word, right? And I thought be quelled at first because that sounds like it's being stamped out. That's not what I just don't think that we're designed as a human species to appreciate violence that much. I don't think we are. If violence only begets violence, I think people want to stop it on both sides necessarily. But here's the thing I didn't account for. So as the actual violence has been ticking off, it's this weird sort of spectrum where you see that the rhetoric has taken off, and the reaction, it's still in a physically, the physical violence has tapered off. But the rhetorical exchanges have gotten worse and worse and worse. And it's difficult to follow along with any of it, man. I'm sure we all saw what happened with the mayor of Minneapolis over the weekend. I have that video we're going to get to in just a second. But before we do, I found this posted yesterday on Facebook, and I think this paints a good picture of where most of social media interaction is right now. Shine, right under the national stories there. It says, the frustrating reality of where we are right now, there is no right answer. Go ahead and pull that up if you can. What you're looking at right now, I think that's a pretty decent example of where we are. No, there is no right answer. And I haven't quite been able to discern the reason why yet. I haven't quite figured most of this out. But just read through some of this right now, and I'll give you a second to respond, Sean, and the Facebook as well. Being silent. If you're silent, you're told that you're not supporting the cause, so you are part of the problem. I had a buddy tell me this over the weekend. A very close friend of mine tell me this over the weekend. He works in a I don't know. It doesn't matter where he works, but he told me the other weekend, he's like, look, man, you can't be silent on this either. He works in a field. I'll say it this way. The guy works in a field that is not at all associated with any of this stuff. He works in a field where you have to publish papers. You have to publish papers to be able to be taken as relevant. And these papers should have nothing to do with what's currently going on. But in this thread of individuals that should be publishing stuff, the narrative is now, well, if you're not publishing stuff that's directly related to either the George Floyd or the protest or whatever else, then your silence is part of the problem. Okay, cool. Well, I guess that means they need to start speaking up. But look at the second one here. If you speak up, you may be told that you're supporting the cause incorrectly. Well, what about X, Y, and Z? This is what Sean and I spoken about 3 years ago, man, that some of leftist ideology and perhaps now some right ideology as well,
but some of leftist ideology is inherently self-refuting. In a sense, they become somewhat cannibalistic, right? That they will start to eat their own because there are thresholds that you can and cannot cross. And eventually, there are two worldviews that come together that butt heads, that only one of which can be true. Only one of which can be true. And you're seeing what's happening right now. If you speak up, you may not be supporting the cause in the right way. What about X, Y, and Z? So then you go back into silence, but silence then forces you back into speaking up. What about spreading positivity? Well, people tell you the world's not all sunshine and rainbows. Seriously, you guys ever heard of toxic positivity? Have you heard of that? I just heard of that over this past weekend for the first time. Toxic positivity apparently is a real thing. What about just being a realist? People saying, why are you so negative, man? Why are you spreading division? Yeah, we don't need that right now. We need messages of positivity. Okay, cool, fine. Well, I'll be positive about the protesters in general. Well, now you're supporting violence, are you? Well, now I got to have this nuanced conversation of separating, the protesters from the rioters and the looters, and they're not the same thing. And I think Black Lives Matter would also agree with me that they're not the same thing, right? But you still have to be able to bring that up. And then the protesters, in some small sense, now you get the COVID conversation coming back in on this, because it's like one version of protesting is okay, but the other version of protesting is not okay at all. And then you have to get into a nuanced conversation of why one is okay, not the other. So it's like, hold on, we're willing to risk lives on the one hand if it's for a cause that we all believe in, but we're not willing to risk lives on the other hand because you're going to minimize the other protest is just wanting to get a haircut. You can be against rioting, but you're more worried apparently about property than you are lives at that point. We saw that narrative thread going through a very long time when the riots were just bursting out. Well, what about the rioting and the protesters? I mean, what about the looting and just destroying property indiscriminately for no reason at all? What are you? You're more worried about the property than the lives itself? I was going back and forth with a member of Real News about this for a very long time. Believing Black Lives Matter. Do you know that all lives matter is a response that we're seeing? Believing all lives matter. All lives matter right now. You're part of the problem. Believing that blue lives matter. Goodness gracious, I don't think I've seen that one in a long time, but good. whoever's bold enough to throw up a blue lives matter right now, golly. Man, I don't envy that. What about COVID? There are bigger problems going on right now. Those affected by COVID. This person that posted this initially said, I've never been so confused in my life. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Right? That's a little bit where we are. That's a little bit where we are, Shine. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm seeing it wrong. Shine's been trying to jump in for a while. Go ahead, though, buddy.
No. I'm glad you didn't let me, but you had me at damned. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that when you had your mouth full. But that is the correct word, I think. We talked a little bit last week about the creeping religious feeling of this. But it's a weird kind of religion where you're not allowed to have forgiveness. You screw up, you're screwed up. You can't get it fixed. But a great example of one of my favorites from over the weekend was you're supporting the cause incorrectly. I think that's one of the ones that everyone, especially the people that are really trying to be supportive, that's the thing they're dealing with the hardest. For example, on Friday, a friend of mine who supports the BLM movement was saying, I really think it's good that some of these police are stepping down. I think that's a good sign, and I think that will lead to change. Within 12 hours, the story he was referencing, by the way, were those Buffalo riot cops who quit.
Gotcha.
And he's like, that's such a good thing. Within 12 hours, the movement had changed their mind because the only reason they were quitting is because they supported corruption. Yeah. And you weren't allowed to say that it was good that those cops, those police officers were quitting. You weren't allowed to say that anymore because the movement had changed its mind about a 12-hour-old story. And people don't know where to throw in their, yeah, and you got it. They don't, some people just don't even, who's got time to get educated on everything that's going on and been going on or whatever. Some people just want a virtue signal, I know, and not in the negative way. They really believe in it, and they want to say, I want to throw my 2 cents in and show my support. And then in their comment section is, you're not doing this correctly. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right.
And that's if you're trying. And if you're not trying, you're definitely damned. Right? It's weird. Yeah. It's weirding me out, man.
That's what, again, man, why I'm saying I don't know.
I think the only way you get through something like this is that you have an objective ideal that's greater than what is being led by the passions of a movement like this right now. And I say the passions, man, because some of this conversation that's coming up is desperately needed for a very long time. But I feel like, go ahead, Sean.
Oh, I was just going to say, the last thing I'll say on this is what's been very interesting to me is the people who have the most fervor and are most ready to shoot people down on social media or in person are the people that are least educated about what's going on. And I'm not trying to slam anybody for being not smart or lacking in cognitive ability. I'm not even saying that. What I'm saying is the people who are really dialed in don't argue with me. They talked with me. They talk with me. We talk about our various life circumstances and maybe ways that things can be improved. That's how I'm able to talk with people that are real activists that are following the BLM movement, that are educated about what's been going on. Not just now, but for a long time. Educated in the history of laws in this country and things like that. But the people who really don't know anything about it, the virtue signaling people, those are the weird ones. The ones who were concerned with nothing but partying and drinking or going to work or whatever. They weren't concerned with politics before COVID-19. They weren't concerned with anything. They weren't concerned with any of the stuff we normally cover on this show. You get what I'm saying? And you don't have to be that kind of person. You don't have to be. We think it's better if you care about your government, but either way, it's those people who just jumped into the fray of politics that are banning their friends when they say stuff on Facebook they don't like.
Yeah.
Tearing apart their own relationships in their own home. Tearing apart their relationships with family members. And that's what's weirding me out. Because you'd think that the people that are most educated, that are maybe organizing protests, attending protests, whatever, those people are actually really calm and will talk to me and we have great conversations. But the people that are just virtue signaling, can't talk to them. Can't do it. And that's weird. It's very weird to me. You'd think it'd be the other way around. You'd think the people that were only tacitly involved would be more apologetic, less forceful. It's very interesting.
I hear you, man. Jonathan just said in Facebook, by the way, the being against rioting, that's agreeing with law. Rioting is not supporting a cause. I would agree with that. It's theft. Vandalism is a form of theft, he says. Violence is not the answer to any civil issue. We need to serve a dose of reality. All sides need to look at the data. As soon as they do, most of the idiocy would dissipate within a rational world. That's right. Kelly just said, damned. That's a great description. Kelly then went on to say that those Buffalo riot cops could have just walked past the old man. They didn't. They assaulted him. To catch up on that and shine, as I'm catching the story, people up on where that story came in from, if you could, where I set updates over the weekend, shortly under the national story section, skip that first video, go to that second video where it says completely unarmed officers. There's a Twitter link. Pull that video up because that's gonna go into this next section here of what I'm predicting is going to happen. And what I'm also predicting that people are probably not ready for when they're making calls for quote unquote defunding or disbanding police. Now, the story that Kelly's bringing up saying that those Buffalo riot cops could have walked past. If you haven't seen this video yet, you don't necessarily need to go watch it. It's in the context of the grotesque videos that have come out over the past 2 or 3 weeks. It's not the worst, but it's pretty rough. There's an elderly individual, looks to be somewhere between the age of at least past 70. I don't know what his actual age is, but he's an older individual. There's a line of police officers in riot gear that are walking forward, and this guy, the elderly individual, Caucasian man, just doesn't move. I don't know if he was looking. Did he? Okay. Well, yeah, and sorry, I was going to say, and they pushed him forward as these lines of police officers would do. They pushed him forward, and he fell back. And there was a what looked to be like a vehicle stop, if you will. A vehicle stop means it's like these big sort of spherical objects placed out there that I don't know, probably be like 2 to 3 feet in diameter or circumference. They were big. They were there. I don't know, is to stop vehicles. Looks like he fell back and hit his head on one of those things and ends up bleeding on the ground for a little while. The police line continually moves forward as one of the police officers tries to go and pick him up. The other police officers say, no, don't pick him up. Medics will attend to that. And then they just continually moving past him, right? It looks like a very dehumanizing depiction on the video itself. Now, what came out of that is that there was a few officers that actually
participated in the act itself that were removed from that team, that riot response team. And in response to those officers being removed, a number of other officers, in a sense of solidarity with their fellow officers, they voluntarily removed themselves. Now, this is a similar trend of a story that you're probably going to start seeing over the next couple of coming weeks. As there continue to be more calls for defunding and disbanding the police, do not be surprised when you start to hear things like we heard out of Minneapolis yesterday. At least I saw Facebook threads going on about this. I could not substantiate it necessarily. But you heard stories about 14 police officers quit in Minnesota yesterday, with another 45 putting in for early retirement. That is going to be the natural progression. I mean, I put it this way. You put yourself in that situation. If you're working for 40, 50 grand a year, whatever police officers make, nobody likes you. It's arguably a terrible job to put yourself in. You're in harm's way every single day, and you don't feel like you're serving the community anymore because the community is actively telling you that you're not serving them anymore. Why would you continue to do that job? They're not going to do it. If that's what they're asking me to do, I mean, they're just going to stop doing the job. And Shine, if you have that video ready, man, go ahead and play. There's a tweet here that I think maybe up on the screen. It says completely unmarked officers in riot gear holding protesters blocks away from the White House. No badges, no insignias, no name tags, nothing. Refuse to tell us who they're with. Well, you know, Shine, if that video's up, I mean, yeah. So I think you can see there's an audio is not necessarily necessary there, but you can see right now these people, the folks that are in this line, they don't necessarily look. I'm trying to figure out a better way to say this. There's not a best way to say. They don't look to be in shape enough to be police officers. Maybe I'm wrong. But like the average demographic, bro, is, I mean, some of them are a little bit older. Some of them are not exactly like, if you're in a police unit, the people that are going to go out to respond to the riots are not the elderly individuals, or at least the ones that are closer to retirement. That one guy in there in particular with the gray mustache, you can tell. Some of them are slightly overweight. Not to say that officers are not overweight. It just doesn't look like the typical individual you see in police gear. And I do not think, I will put it this way, I'm virtually certain this is not some police force going out there and saying, you know what, just remove all your badges, take all that stuff away. You know what we're going to do? We're going to increase the liability that we could have on this police department. That's what we're going to do. No, man, these are like private citizens. These are just some militia force that got together. Just wants to, like,
I heard they were from the Bureau of Prisons. I don't have an article for that right now, but I heard that the unmarked people were Bureau of, but who knows, right? I mean, they could tell us anything they wanted to, but I mean, I don't know. This way, like, it's D.C. If you go burn stuff in D.C., expect people to show up to try to stop you, and that's my opinion.
That's the point that I'm making with this. All right, is that if they're from the Bureau of Prisons, I don't know where they're from, but I'll put it this way: they're not from an institution or an organization that would actually say, "Go put this badge on and go out there." Why would a police force tell you to remove your badge? It doesn't make any sense at all. That would only increase the liability from a legal standard and otherwise. And I bring this story up, bro, just to go into the next stance of, again, one more time, let me call for, as we're asking to disband the police, as we're asking to defund departments, I would just prefer for the individuals, if I'm going to be, this is going to sound braggadocious, it is what it is. The individuals that have been operating in this world for a very long time, come to us, come to me, come to some of the other friends that have been trying to work in a nuanced way to figure out what the proper parameters between, say, the constitutionality of this situation, where violations are taking place, where there may be overstep, where police have become far too authoritarian. Justin Amash is a fantastic example as well. Go read some of his stuff. Thomas Massey is a fantastic example as well. Go read some of his stuff. Hannah Cox in the local level here is a fantastic example as well at the Tennessee level. Go read some of her stuff. This outright call for defunding police in general, coupled with Democrats' inability to support the Second Amendment, it just is not going to work. And you're going to see some of this stuff in response, which I don't know. Maybe that's the best thing to go for. Maybe that's what would people would prefer to end up happening. But I'll tell you this right now, Shine, as we're pulling up the next video.
Quick, Grant.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to make sure we're clear, Grant does this sometimes. He said we are calling for the defunding of police. We are not. The BLM is calling for the defunding of police. I think he meant as a conversation in America. But I do want to point out, as we're talking about this, and I know you're seeing a lot of it, but when you juxtapose this commentary about defunding the police against that most recent Rasmussen poll about a plurality of people being okay with active duty military securing the streets, and like 80% of people being okay with the National Guard being used against to secure streets, I really don't think America is for defunding the police departments. I think that's an extreme minority that is being very loud on Facebook. Just throwing that out there.
And I appreciate you too. I get in this habit sometimes of speaking sort of in the third, speaking as we in the collective. No, I'm not. We're not calling for that. The movement itself now is calling it a defund police. Matt says in Facebook, look who is training and hiring. It's not what we think, mostly city cops. Daniel Snowden said in Facebook, you're not allowed to kill people with impunity anymore. It's time to retire. Jonathan said in Facebook, there's more law enforcement officers in DC per square mile of area than anywhere else in the entire world. And what I'm asking for here, and this is just a simple appeal. I don't think it's ever going to go anywhere, actually do anything, but I'm just trying to make sense of like, I just can't operate in the world of pure sensationalism anymore. It's too much. It's too much to sustain. I can't operate in the world of pure sensationalism on spectrum conversations from far right and bouncing back to far left and bouncing back to far right. And it's the toilet bowl conversation that Sean picks up, man. As you're swirling down, you pick up a thread here and a thread there, and it's just too much for me to keep up with anymore. I have to be able to get back to some sense of nuance because I just cannot take the conversation. Disband all police tomorrow. Well, okay. Pause for a second, man. Let's talk about that. I hear you. If anybody hears you, believe me. Please believe me. I hear you. I've been working towards something like this for a very long time. But what does that mean? Defund, disband the police? Like overnight, just get rid of all of them? Has anybody in this movement that's asking for this understood what is the policy placement? I've read some stuff from Black Lives Matter last night. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, the stuff to me that does make sense is the people that have been out there preaching this message for close to 2 or 3 decades. My hope is that this defund, disband the police conversation would fall very comfortably on top of some of the libertarian ideology that's been floating around for a very long time. Sean, if you could real quick, and then I'll get back to these other videos. Skip down to in the national story section. You'll see a red highlighted portion there that says compare and contrast generalized call for defunding the police with that of Amash. Click on that Twitter link. So what you're seeing on your screen right now is something that I would totally support and that Amash has been calling for a very long time. This is stuff that makes sense to me. And this is a little bit, slightly, of what some of the Black Lives Matter and some of the movements calling for right now. And then we're talking about defund or disbanding police. And I'm going to get to some of the comment section in a second because it seems like they're going crazy with this. Ending qualified immunity, in civil asset forfeiture, in the drug war, in overcriminalization, in no-knock warrants, in militarization of police, in mandatory minimums. I'll have you know right now, man, when I'm talking about, like, I would like to think that I know what I'm talking about this. The company I'm working for, we worked on half of these issues this session alone. This is me speaking, not representing Americans for Prosperity, but Americans for Prosperity. We worked on bills in the state of Tennessee that tackled half of these things. Civil asset forfeiture, overcriminalization, mandatory minimums. At a corporate level, we're also heavily involved in some qualified immunity stuff, y'all. Like, we've been there. We've been doing it. We've been operating in this world for a very long time. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to some of this stuff. But this overarching generalized term of just defund, get rid of all of it, man. Okay, but that means everybody's going to have to start supporting the Second Amendment as well. And you know that half of us don't, right? Like, we all understand that. I mean, aside from Maj Touré, that dude is incredible, man. A hero, not just of this community, but somebody that if you don't know who Maj Touré is, go check that dude out yesterday. Find that guy.
Go check out the Joe Rogan interview that him and Crystal Ball just did. It was so good. It was so good. Go watch that and then watch their show. It's one of the best left-right. It's the new left-right paradigm show. They're both kind of populists. But it's so good. But I'm sorry. I'm a fan, so I freaked out.
And when Justin Moss, like, just breaking down some of these things, if you guys haven't heard some of these terms before, because again, that's what I'm saying. I was talking to my family over the weekend and saying, look, man, like, I would hope what all of this eventually gets to is to settle back down into a very nuanced conversation with the people that have been in this world doing it, pushing it, hoping for it for a very long time. There are people like an Amash, like a Thomas Massey, to some extent a Rand Paul, to some extent, please hear me, to some extent to Rand Paul, that have been pointing, again, Hannah Cox in the local area here, Beacon Center here, ACLU in Tennessee has been on this for a very long time. And there are great organizations that have been preaching this message for a very long time, drawing attention to the constitutional violations, that the power's just been getting a little bit too much. Qualified immunity, okay? Basically says when an officer commits something that an individual would normally be held responsible for, like you or I, they cannot be held civilly responsible for that, meaning I can't go sue them for money. It doesn't have anything to do necessarily with the criminal liability. In the civil side, if I want to get money, some type of compensation out of that, I can't do that because they have a qualified immunity from being sued in a civil sense. Civil asset forfeiture, we spoke about that at the beginning of the show. It's basically where officers can take your property without charging you with a crime. The war on drugs, the drug war. I would hope that the statistics alone behind that could prove that for me. It just doesn't work. It's not working. It hasn't worked in the past. This is not a Democrat-Republican thing. This isn't even a libertarian thing necessarily. This stuff just is. It just is. The war on drugs is not, nor ever has, accomplished its stated goal. Overcriminalization, that to me hits it almost on the head. When we're talking about reforming some of these policies, we are talking about generational concerns. If I can take a father who hit, say, some 3-strike law in California for selling marijuana or something, if I can take that father and put him back in the home for just a single generation, do y'all realize how much of an impact that has to that child's life? The child then grows up with a father, as opposed to growing up without a father who then has to pass that on to his child, who passed that on to the grandchild. And the sins of our fathers stop. They no longer pass on to these future generations, man. The overcriminalization is as much about just doing what's constitutionally correct as it is about the family, man. That's what a lot of this stuff is about. One of the primary components of why I said the other day of let the police story tell the racial story, man, is because police brutality and the overarching problem of our police state, the authority they have, tends to affect lower socioeconomic communities more than anybody else, because lower socioeconomic communities tend to commit more crimes than anybody else. This is what's happened for all of human history. Now, in America, there's a racial component attached to that. In large part, I think, because African Americans haven't really been considered full-on citizens until about 1964. That is the Supreme Court analysis, not mine. Since the 64 Civil Rights Acts, we have to look back and think, okay, Jim Crow laws, you weren't allowed to own property. You weren't allowed to vote in particular ways. You weren't allowed to marry certain individuals. You couldn't go to a bathroom in a certain spot. You couldn't drink from a certain water fountain. Dude, we're talking 64 since that stuff stopped. So all this stuff is mixed up in each other, but at the core of all of it, for me, is the family unit. If you fix some of that family unit problem, that's what I'm saying. I think Republicans have missed the messaging that the criminal justice reform has as much to do with keeping the family whole as it does with anything else. Ending mandatory minimums, ending the militarization of police. This stuff I can comprehend. This stuff I can get my head behind. This is Justin Amash now. Alternatively, Senator Paul said the same thing in 2014. There's a Times article right there. Demilitarize the police. And Sean, I know I'm sending you all over the place here, buddy, but if we could go back up to the notes there, national stories, you'll see updates over the weekend. That second video underneath there, we definitely want to play the audio on this one. It's about a 2 to 3 minute video. It'll give me some time to catch up on the Facebook notes as well, because I kind of went off there. But there's this video here. Sorry, man. Actually, I told you wrong, buddy. I told you wrong. It's jumped down for the Minneapolis protesters throw Democrat mayor out after he refuses to commit. It's directly underneath the last one I showed you there. That's my fault. Now, Sean and I called this a couple years back, okay? When I was talking before about, we're in an unfortunate spot where leftist ideology is it's inherently refuting. It's not just circular. It's kind of like this way, okay? There's an old philosophical adage where if someone wants to say, well, all truth is relative. My truth is my truth and your truth is your truth, right? Well, okay. If someone comes up to me and says there's no such thing as objective truth, that statement itself has to be objectively true for there to be no such thing as objective truth. You follow what I'm saying? And that is at the core. That is like the fundamental precept of leftist ideology, that there is no such thing as objective truth. But you see how that immediately refutes itself, because that statement has to be true for the end result to be true. So we basically are saying there's no such thing as objective truth except the one truth that there is no such thing as objective truth.
Yeah, go ahead and play that for me, Sean. That.
All right, get the fuck out of here. Go.
Go home, Jacob. Go home.
You have to take responsibility here. I've been coming to grips with my own brokenness in this situation, my own failures, my own shortcomings, and I know there needs to be deep-seated structural reform in terms of how the department operates. The systemically racist system needs to be revamped. The police union needs to be put in its place. We need to make sure that everything from the union contract to the way that the arbitration functions to the way that our officers and the culture in the department behaves, it all becomes change.
Jacob Fry, we have a yes or no question for you. Hey, fist up, y'all. Fist up. Jacob Fry, we have a yes or no question for you. Yes or no, will you commit to defunding Minneapolis Police Department? What did I say? We don't want no more police. Is that clear? We don't want people with guns toting around in our community, shooting us down. You have an answer? It is a yes or a no. It is a yes or a no. Will you defund the Minneapolis Police Department? All right, be quiet, y'all. Be quiet, because it's important that we actually hear this. It's important that we hear this, because if y'all don't know, he's up for re-election next year. If y'all don't know, he's up for re-election next year. And if he says no, guess what the fuck we gonna do next year? What'd you say? One more time.
I do not support the full abolition of the police.
All right, get the fuck out of here. Go, get out of here. Go home, Jacob, go home. 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 Go home, Jacob.
Go home, Jacob. Go home. Go home, Jacob. Go home.
All right, so shame. I mean, like, I don't know, dude. I just don't know how seriously to take the conversation if it's devolving it into an episode of Game of Thrones. I don't know. Is that a thing that American culture used to do? Is chant shame while politicians walk down the streets? And it's not.
It's very Spanish Inquisition of them.
Look, and it'd be one thing if it was a crowd of Trump supporters shaming down a Democrat mayor. It'd be another thing if it was a Black Lives Matter supporter shaming down a Republican elected mayor. This is a group of Democrats shaming a Democrat mayor who have up until that very moment, up until that exact moment, had been like a true champion for what had been going on, man. Like, he took the COVID-19 stuff and just threw that out the window.
See the video of him on his knees crying at the funeral?
Right.
He was at the funeral a couple days before on his knees with a hand on, very emotional, very emotional, bawling his eyes out.
Let me catch some of these comments, by the way, before I go into another rant. Jonathan said, I personally believe that anyone that wants to defund has an inherent character trait of criminality. So keep crying for the defunding police. We know who is shady. Eric says, less cops doesn't change anything. Getting rid of cops doesn't change anything. Only reforming laws will help make a better future for everyone. I think we have plenty of evidence what happens when you create a power vacuum. That's a little bit of what I'm saying, Eric. It's a little bit of what I'm saying the whole time. Democrats, if you're calling for defunding the police and at the same time coupling that with getting rid of the Second Amendment, don't take my word for that. Justice John Paul Stevens, I'm talking former Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens, just 2 years ago, wrote a New York Times op-ed entitled something to the effect of, "It's time to get rid of the Second Amendment."
A time to get rid of the Second Amendment. Richard just sent us something in Facebook here. It brings up an interesting topic. I'll get to that comment in a second, though. Daniel said, I've been saying this for 2 years. Daniel went on to say, I'm glad that's nothing. Eric said, I don't know what to respond to there. Kelly said, I absolutely love the idea of Thomas Massey and not Maj Touré ticket. She says she wants Thomas Massey and Maj Touré to run on a ticket as president of the United States. I would vote for that ticket. I got no problem with that. Says, I hope that happens in my lifetime. Yeah, man. Maj Touré, Thomas Massey ticket. I'd run for that. I don't care which one's which. Maj Touré president, Thomas Massey president, whoever's running VP, doesn't matter. James said in Facebook here, in the war on drugs, that would take away as much power that the police abuse. The war on drugs has failed in an epic way and has given the police every reason to act aggressively against otherwise peaceful people. And that goes without saying that the war on drugs creates crime. Again, I know the war on drugs in general is a very difficult topic, especially for a lot of Republicans. But I would hope you could take my word for it. A guy that I don't know if I'm trusted in this community or not, but it's something that I've been studying for a very long time. When James says that the war on drugs is not working, it's statistically true. It's just not working. As many people as we are arresting, and this almost the exponential increase that we've had in these graphs over time, that this is our prison population, right? It's done a little bit something like that. It has not decreased. It has not decreased the amount of drugs that are in this country, which would be the intended design goal, right? Going on now, they're going back and forth. They're following up about something. I can't follow what's going on Facebook there. You guys are going so fast with this. Richard did say a second ago, though, it would matter if those people voted. Now, here's an interesting wrinkle in what Richard just said, though. It would matter if those people voted. Sean, if you could go down in the national story section. I'm hopping all over the place, and sorry about that, Shine. But see where it says right underneath that thing that's red highlighted, compare, contrast, generalize for defunding police. Jump down a little bit. One of the next things that's black underlined is Sean King tweet that people are still trying to figure out. Sean King is a guy, I don't even know necessarily. Go ahead and throw it up there right now so people can be reading through. Sean King is a guy that I don't necessarily know how to describe. His account says obviously he's the founder of North Star, Real Justice PAC, Flip the Senate Action PAC, the host of Breakdown Podcast. He's a husband, father of 5, and a leader. He's a leader in the black community. I'll say that much for sure, right? But I don't think it would be a stretch to say that he's also a bit of a provocateur. I'm probably being kind with that description too. He's a bit of a provocateur. He likes to stir stuff up. Richard said a second ago, it wouldn't matter if those people voted, and like 100%, man. In Tennessee, for example, we have one of the lower voter turnout rates in the entire nation. But that's even something that's difficult for people to get their heads around now, too. Look at this tweet from Sean King, man. Stop generically telling us to vote in response to all the police brutality we have right now. Yes, we should vote, but we have to be very specific. Democrats from top to bottom are running the cities with the worst police brutality in America right now. We voted for them. I think that's what Richard is touching on also. People not just have to vote, but you have to vote for the right person. And in general, that's one of the themes that I'm hoping to bring up today is like, goodness, man, this is sort of the double-edged sword of President Trump becoming president. My brother said to me several years ago, this is right after the election. We talk politics all the time, supremely intelligent guy. He said, I'll tell you nothing, if for nothing else, Grant, he said, I will say, President Trump is making it so that more people are paying attention to politics than ever in at least my lifetime, for sure. And we might be at a point in American history where more people are paying attention to the reality TV show that is in American politics than ever before in American history. Now, that means more people are going to get out there and vote, and that's possibly a good thing. Because, look, as Thomas Jefferson said, we do not have a democracy. We have a democracy of those that participate. Now, the more people that end up participating, usually the better off it is. Man, we have so much stuff to go on today. I don't think we're going to get to the end of all this material. But this one in particular, I really wanted to bring up before we got to the end of the show, just to show as more people start to participate, it becomes a little bit of a thing that Shine mentioned a second ago. I'm sure you all have a lot of friends, too, that are just now becoming aware, just waking up to some of these issues, or just now getting involved in politics. And they are super, like, full pedal to the metal, gas forward, everything. They're on it. They're in it. But it also becomes a little bit disconcerting and slightly disheartening when you hear the responses to some of these things, because it's just, how do you take someone and in a 30-second response or a 1-paragraph response through social media, how do you walk them through the years of stuff that you've been looking into? And how do you make sense of something like this next headline here? An Axios headline coming out of the story that we just saw a second ago. The mayor of Minneapolis was essentially shouted down by his own people, by his own supporters, by his own constituents, shouted down and forced out of their area because he would not support something as openly generic as defund the police. In the meantime, I have Sean King on the other side here saying, like, you can't just tell us to generically vote. But I guess the other movement says, well, yes, but I can tell you just to generically defund the police. What does that mean? Thomas Massey knows what it means. I think Justin Amash knows what it means. Hannah Cox knows what it means. Axios article looking at you right now. Veto-proof majority in Minneapolis City Council vows to disband police department. 9 members of the Minneapolis City Council, a veto-proof majority of the panel of 13, signed a pledge at a rally on Sunday. This is not... Yeah, man. The time to commit your vote to something is not at a rally. It's not when emotions are high, man. That's not the time to commit a vote to something. I mean, unless you're just being a pure politician about it. That's what I'm saying. Unless you're unless you're primarily... Say it. Yes, exactly. Sean said, unless you're signaling. Yeah. Unless you're primarily worried about getting elected again, the time to commit a vote to something is probably not at a rally. Because I, as an informed voter, as someone that would look at this manner in an objective manner, would think to themselves, like, for real? Have you looked into this yet? I know you have a crowd of like 1,000 people right now chanting your name. And I mean, I would probably say the same thing, but like the right thing to do is not commit now. It's like, go back to your office, man. Read some papers. Get some lobbyists in there. Hear some differing opinions from different viewpoints. I don't know. Anyways, committed to this on a rally on Sunday to begin the process of dismantling the Minneapolis Police Department. Now, why it matters, Axios says, the move to replace the police department with a community-based public safety model. What does that mean? Look, I could get behind that. I could get behind, and see, this is where, like, honestly, if you're a libertarian or an anarcho-capitalist, this stuff should be like high-flying times for y'all. All of your posts for the next week should just be like, told you so, ... right? I mean, it should.
Why don't we just go with the Mexican cartel model? We can just chop up our cities into, gangs can control this area, and we know that gang controls this area. You go a little bit north, and that gang controls that area. It seems like it would work out really, really well.
Well, see, and this is what I'm saying, Sean, is like people need to be able to have the conversation. Like just defunding the police is not a solution to anything. Defunding the police with privatization in a communities-based model, that might be something. Having a bunch of people that are Second Amendment supporters doing it for themselves, that might be something. Hiring a private force entirely. Like what was the thing with the community show, not the community show, the Parks and Rec show, Everyone Loves Ron. He's like, my perfect model is to have Chuck E. Cheese run the national parks. Right? Like his point is you could privatize everything and probably do it better than the government is doing.
Let me throw something out there, though, that I don't think anyone is thinking about. Do you think things are going to get better when rich people have private armies to protect their property that are not badge bonded police officers? That's my question. Do you think things will get better? Because if there's no police, they're probably going to get some kind of immunity eventually. Eventually, maybe in 50 years, 100 years. But then they're not badged. They're not government people. They're private security forces. Do you think Fifth Avenue won't have guards if you defund the New York police? Are you crazy? No, they just won't be bonded, insured, and backed by the power of the government, which means you won't be able to sue the city of New York, right? I don't know. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was gonna. Kelly says, "Well, that's the problem. These." She said another word. I'm just gonna say these politicians. She threw a different word before that. Kelly said that's the problem. These politicians say good things to get themselves voted into office and do exactly the opposite. Daniel said it's okay. They're politicians. They just do what they want to. Anyways, Eric went on to say, it's taken me years to get to my wife to admit that she may be wrong about a few things. She's been a lifelong Democrat. We've had many talks about guns, taxation, social justice. So yeah, how can one expect one to change one's mind overnight or two? And this is what I'm saying. Like, I think there is room for a conversation. Like, let's look at Detroit, okay? Because of what's been going on in Detroit, I watched this Vox documentary on it about 2 years ago. It's fascinating. Because of what's been going on in Detroit, I believe, don't quote me on the stats, but it's something close to this, that only about 70% of their police force is actually funded through the state, meaning that 70% of the people on the ground that are enforcing law on the books are actually done through state-controlled entities. Now, what are you saying, Mr. Henry? That's a weird, convoluted way to say it. What I'm saying is that like private security forces are doing exactly what Shine just said in Detroit. It's already happening. That like private gated communities in Detroit get a bunch of like demilitarized Humvees and put lamps on the top of them and just like patrol around the area. So it is already happening. There are models out there, and that's just one I can think off the top of my head. There are models out there that are already doing this. My biggest appeal for today, Minnesota, Minneapolis, if you are calling for a full disbanding of the police department, what else or what is your alternate plan? If you also do not support the Second Amendment, I don't get it. I don't get it, man. People are not just that naturally altruistic. Crime is still going to be a thing. I'll finish this story out real quick. They say that why it matters to the move is to replace the police department with a community-based public safety model. This answers the calls of activists who've been pushing for a massive overhaul of law enforcement in Minneapolis after the killing of George Floyd. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, he's the guy you just saw a second ago that was shouted down by that crowd. He was berated and told to go home with a shame, shame, shame protest on Saturday after refusing to commit to defunding the police department. And this is what I'm saying, y'all. This is where we are. Where Mayor Jacob Frey wanted to go out there and have a conversation. They said, no. We're not doing conversations. This is demands. This is a list of demands. So this is not a negotiation, they said. That's what I'm saying. You cannot negotiate in the extremes here. That's not how civilized society works. I'm not even sorry about that. I was going to say I'm sorry. I'm not even sorry about that. That is not how civilized society works. Council members said on Sunday that they had not yet fleshed out specific plans for what the new public safety system will look like. But, okay. All right. Well, then
appease the mob. Think about it later.
All right, dude. So let's put these two headlines together here, okay? What did I just read a second ago? 2 lines up. A veto-proof majority of the panel of 13 signed a pledge at a rally on Sunday to begin the process of dismantling the Minneapolis Police Department. Jump down a few lines. Council members also said on Sunday that they had not fully fleshed out specific plans. So what? With a bunch of question marks. What are you talking about then? You committed yourself to a veto-proof majority of defunding police departments, but you have no plan as to what that looks like. So what are you committing yourself to? What are you committing yourself to? I say that out of frustration because, look, man, I've been here in this world doing it for a long time. You're screwing it up for everybody. You're messing this whole thing up for everybody. Nobody is going to get behind this kind of conversation. And there is stuff that has to be done. There is stuff that we can accomplish right now, a small, little fragile window that we have a limited period of time to do a lot of awesome stuff with. But if you come out with this nonsense right now, and I say nonsense right now, for my anarcho-capitalist, my libertarian friends, please, nonsense right now. Overton window shift is a very real thing. For those that know what I'm talking about, you understand why I'm making it appeal this way. Overton window shift is a very real thing. We're in the time period where we are shifting a window as to what people think about protection, self-responsibility, self-defense, the need for a police state. You can't come in there and throw all that chaos on top of the stuff right now when we're in the ability to have a nuanced, real conversation. Daniel said they committed to beginning the process. Well, I hope so, man. I do hope so, because with what I'm reading from Axios reporting said that they committed to a veto-proof majority on a vote. We gotta go, though. Love y'all, by the way. Seriously do. One last time, all I'm making an appeal for is, if you don't support the Second Amendment and you want to defund police departments, bro, have some conversation with some libertarians in the next couple days. Talk to your anarcho-capitalist friends. Talk to somebody that supports the Second Amendment. Like, start a dialogue before you just jump headlong into this stuff. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. RealNewsRadio.live, RealNewsRadio.live. My name is Mr. Henry. We'll be signing off for today. David Shine Thompson over there as well. We'll see y'all tomorrow.